At 18 years old, I stood up to my manager at my first ever job, and I got fired for that. Not because I was bad at the job, I was doing more than double their workload and the senior analysts, and they got me fired because I stopped letting them walk all over me. And that's when I learned something that nobody tells you when you start your first ever job and how to prepare for it. Corporate isn't about working hard, it's about power. And if you're nice or seen as the nice guy, you will be exploited for that, and that will be manipulated and used against you. You are a target. So imagine this. When I was 17, it was my first ever job, my first proper job, and I was an apprentice for a software company. I'm a gamer, I'm a bit of a geek. I've got zero confidence working in an office environment. I've never worked in one. And the salary I was given was £2.69 an hour, 5 days a week, 7 hours a day, which equates to about less than £400 a month. I felt so lucky, honestly, so lucky that I'd been given a job, because I did not believe that someone would give me a job for whatever reason. I don't know where that imposter syndrome comes from, but that's just how I felt. The belief from my side was that if I work hard, I keep my head down and I respect and just be nice to everyone, things will work out, because that was a belief that was installed, I guess, from my parents and school. And I was in college previously before I started this first job as an apprentice. And going into this office, I was the youngest by 15 years, which is pretty insane. And I guess that's what they say, right? If you work hard, be respectful, be a team player, everything will fall into place. The weird thing about this story is at the start is where the guy who hired me, my actual manager, he gets fired about 6 weeks into the job. So I got hired around end of October, November. He got fired in December at a Christmas party because HR caught him following a woman into a bathroom drunk where he tried to harass her, which is fucking insane. But that was like my first Christmas party, my first office party, my first interaction of, oh wow, okay, there's some loonies running here. But he went, and then suddenly I'm an apprentice with no manager. And then within my team, there was 2 women left. One of them gets bumped up to the desk manager, and the other one's a senior analyst who's been there a couple of years. And they look at me when this decision was announced. They look at me as this 17-year-old kid. I've got no confidence, and you can just see him clock it. And they're thinking, like, this guy will do whatever we want. And that's exactly what I did. I did whatever they wanted. Every shit job that nobody else wanted to touch, every ticket that they couldn't be bothered with. They never wanted to answer the phones because the apprentice will do it. And in some way, the apprentice does have to cut their teeth. They have to have an understanding of all the shit practices and all the shit jobs, because that's the pecking order. And that's what I certainly thought. And I never pushed back, not once, because I just thought that's what an apprentice did. And to give you a bit of a profiling about these 2 characters, the manager was incredibly sarcastic, not confrontational, but her words were incredibly mean, and she would say something just to let it stick to you. And the other analyst, not very bright, but very confrontational, and they were very both calculated. And instances, just to give you a bit of context, where I would be on the phone or I'd be speaking to another team behind me, and we would be in silence, and you'd just hear typing on the keyboards and little giggles, and they would occasionally be moving past their monitor to have a look at me and then just burst out laughing. All these weird mind games. And then the other classic of being used as a shield. So the way I worked kind of operated would all be allocated clients, and in different fields. I would try to do all my work obviously the best, because I'd be worried, because I want to impress everyone and make sure I'm doing the right job, because I didn't obviously have the confidence or understanding. Whenever something happened with one of their clients, it would mysteriously end up in my queue, and the audit would be deleted or amended because they were exploiting a bug within the help desk system, which was unbelievable. But it bought them more time whenever the ops directors would be chasing on these issues. What's going on? It's with the apprentice. Well, get it out of his queue. It's not for him. So very smart. The worst part is that I didn't realise this was happening. I just thought this is how work was. Again, very naive. But here's what they didn't really see, what was happening with myself. I was learning the job. I was sat next to another team. It was a medical software company. We were sharing the office. It was a sister company. They were more technical. They were building technical platforms and data architectures. And I was picking up this technical stuff, which they had never bothered to be intervened with or wanted any sort of intervention, because they just couldn't be asked. They were just happier in their own little bubble of comfort. And because I showed this genuine interest, I was getting good at it, really good. So we were measured on all these bullshit corporate statistics, as if anyone's worked in corporate, you recognise. So ticket closures, what your closure rate is, feedback, and how you're actually performing. And we actually charged out billable time, so how much billable time we were charging out to clients, right? Thankfully, the MD noticed, so he would be out on the road most of the time because he'd be getting new sales in or would be working with clients. And he said to me, look, I've looked at the numbers, the feedback that we've got from existing clients. You've done fantastic. I want to offer you a proper analyst contract at the end of your apprenticeship, which was a couple of months away, and I was over the moon about it. And we want to actually double your salary, so from £2.69 to £5.40 for the remaining 2-3 months. We want to put that in place because you've done really well. And I was over the moon, which is ridiculous. And this should have been a good thing, but it wasn't. And it wasn't a good thing because the MD obviously had to inform my manager what was going on. And she didn't have any understanding or any overview of salaries on the desk because she wasn't given that responsibility yet. And she made some pretty harsh comments to me. She said, I can't believe that's what you're getting paid. You don't even deserve the upgrade. And she then decided to tell the analyst and everyone else within the office what was on. And the other teams could recognise how uncomfortable that was. Yet they thought that was fine for whatever reason. So I was clearly their punching bag. But one day I was speaking to one of the lads in the medical company team that I was just speaking to you about. And I was asking them, I don't know, it was about a technical issue. The analyst, who had obviously been there longer, she was forced to pick up a call. She was forced to actually take a call whilst I was speaking to someone else about another issue. Out of nowhere, she shouted, are you actually going to do anything work today? Because you've done nothing. And that wasn't a joke. You usually say that to someone you're quite close to, or it would be in a bantery way. But there was a smirk on her face, and the other one, the manager, was looking over to see if I would get a reaction for this. But 2 months prior, all the bonuses were done, and they missed out on their bonuses because they didn't put out enough chargeable time. I remember saying, and I don't know why I was so confident in this moment, because I would have said boo to a goose maybe 3 or 4 months prior. I said, well, I left the calls because I know you really need the bonus because you didn't get it this time. The look on her face and also my manager's face, I think it was a recognition of, oh, he's grown a nutsack here, but it was also, you've just embarrassed me and my manager in front of me. And the teams who obviously understood that I felt quite uncomfortable around these two were laughing because they were like, all right, fair play, good for you, kidder. But here's the thing that people don't like. The moment you stop being weak, they don't respect you for it. They just find a new angle. Here's the other thing that nobody tells you about office politics, especially in corporate. It's not what you do at your desk that decides your career. It's who you're drinking with on a random Tuesday or Wednesday night, forming these alliances with leadership who have had one too many drinks and they start sharing gossip and things that you're not supposed to know. And they have a fear that they want to be friendly with you because they don't want you to leak that information. And unfortunately for me, these two girls with my team were awfully close with the development director, who was an MD who had executive powers to make decisions on behalf of the business. And that was unfortunate for me because what happened the next day is pretty tragic, and this was the end of my career. But just going back a step, this very small petty corporate segment where an 18-year-old lad who stood up for himself against two girls who were in their like 30s, mid-30s, because of comments and other things that they had been making to me 11 months prior, this one bite back has initiated that I was to receive a written warning and also apparently a verbal warning, which I received 2 months prior apparently, but that never happened for the same conduct. But I went into the office the next day, obviously a bit shaken up and a bit worried about what would be said. And I went into Outlook and I saw a meeting invite to go into meeting room 1 at 9 o'clock, where the development director and my manager would be. They slid over a piece of paper where it said, this is a written statement of your conduct yesterday and you are now on your final warning. And I remember, again, keep in mind, this is me coming of age. I would have been 17, I would have been 18 at the time. And I wasn't just becoming a man outside of the office, growing up and maturing. Inside the office, I almost felt there was an element of pride in me to kind of save. And it was a case of, I'm not going to be treated like this. I'm not going to be spoken in this manner. And I don't think this is fair. So when they told me that I was on a final warning, I just exploded. I lost my shit. And I was told and forced to leave the office. And my heart just sank. Because I remember thinking, I've lost my job. I've let my family down. This is something I've worked so hard to get. My first job, and I've been fired for it. But again, I was 18. I was learning how the office worked, what work was about. And I was kind of finding myself in society. If you don't stick up for yourself, then you're going to be walked all over. And listen, at the time, it did break me a little bit. But looking back, it taught me everything I actually needed to know about how the working world really operates. Because here's what nobody tells you when you start your first job. If you're weak, people will use it. If you're too nice, people will take advantage of it. And if you're competent and you stay quiet about it, someone else will always take credit. And if you finally stand up for yourself, some people won't respect you for it. they'll just see you as a threat and they'll come for you. And the worst part is that this doesn't just happen at the bottom in these smaller corporate companies. It gets a lot worse the higher up you go. I continued having a career in IT and I've loved it, and I've obviously moved in AI, but a couple of years ago I went into IT leadership. I worked for a private equity firm, had billions under management, and the stuff I witnessed because I was in with these leadership teams was horrendous. My boss was about 5'5", he was a narcissist. I witnessed him psychologically tear down a man who stood at 6'6", and this guy was a kind giant, he was lovely, but he made him cry in front of everyone, and I had to step in and just go, "You're out of order." And I would often have to do this with people. And unfortunately for this guy, he come in the office the next day and completely smashed the place up. And the problem is that it's the same playbook, it's just bigger paychecks. Because here's the truth that nobody wants to say out loud. The people who make it to the top in corporate, they aren't the smartest, but they are the most ruthless. It's because they don't care about people, they care about the business, and that's why businesses reward people like this. And that's why you have higher tendencies of sociopaths in these companies. So if you're starting your first job right now, whether it's an apprenticeship or whether you're just getting into your career, you don't survive this stuff by being nice. Being nice is what makes you a target, and that might sound incredibly insane, but working in corporate is mental. So you better get ready for this, because you don't survive by being aware or just by being competent. You have to learn faster than everyone else around you, and never ever give anyone the reason to think you're weak. You can still be a good person, you can still be kind, but kindness without a spine, it's just bait. And that sounds incredibly unfortunate, and it sounds like prison mentality. But the people in corporate, for people who have worked in it, it is mental, and you really have to navigate the space carefully just to survive to get that paycheck at the end of the month. I lost my first job at 18. It cost me confidence for about a year, but after I started to understand how the world worked and I started gaining confidence in myself, you start to recognise that the whole corporate game is a joke, and being able to navigate it is a real skill. But what I do love about generations now coming up, they're calling out the corporate bullcrap. They're calling out all the things that are right and wrong, and people are checking out mentally. You got people quiet quitting, and I think in my next video I'm going to talk about why everyone's checking out of corporate. See you then.